the agenda, so maybe that'll work out just as well. And if Councilman Dobler misses much of it, he can watch it on the replay, right? So with that, I'm Karen Hiller. I'm the chair of the City of Topeka Council's Social Service, I'm that too, Public Health and Safety Committee. It is Monday, March the 9th at 3 p.m. We're in the Holiday Building. With me is one of our two committee members. Introduce.
Councilwoman Ortiz, District 3.
And we are awaiting the arrival of Councilman Dobler from District 9. Don't have a message, so I assume he's just slightly delayed. With that, let's start the agenda. Again, our agenda has a primary focus on working, taking some more steps on a review of the International Property Maintenance Code, but we did want to have a report on how things were going with the homeless camps. The intent was that we would spend about 10 or 15 minutes on that just to get updated, and we have moved that to the beginning of the agenda for the schedules of a number of people. So we will approve you and I can approve the February minutes, and then we'll get right on to the homeless issues. It's been moved and seconded to approve the February 17th minutes. Any corrections, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Homeless update. Are we leading to you, Sergeant Klamm? Why don't you get it started? Thank you so much.
All right, well, thanks for having me up. We've been very busy here lately. Obviously, you guys know about the relocation with majority of the campers, at least in Tent City, residing on railroad property, whether that's BNSF or Union Pacific. So identifying how many people are actually down there, what resources we need to help them relocate in an organized manner. That's kind of been a lot of what's happening lately. Overall, things are progressing fairly nicely. Overall, and I think Corrie will talk about it a little bit more, the state of Kansas through KDADS was able to find some money, a significant amount of money, which will allow us to house 28 family or 28 households for 6 months out of that group. We are estimating there's around 45 people or so currently residing in Tent City. And so that's not 28 people, it's 28 households. So couples and things like that will be able to go together if they so choose. But that's 28 of that 45, 28 households of that 45 that we will be able to relocate into actual housing. It is only for 6 months, so that is temporary. However, the whole idea, kind of like what we did before, is once they are housed and that once they're in a safe environment, wrap around any services around them they potentially need, whether it's mental health, drug addiction, what have you, help them make sure they get their IDs that they need, and then hopefully help them progress as far as jobs or Social Security or whatever they need so they can sustain housing. Very similar to what we did, a year and a half ago, things like that. So that's kind of the big stuff that's been happening lately. What questions does the council have?
Councilwoman, how are we doing with the retention on the folks that took the permanent housing? We were doing really, really well last time we had a report.
That'll be a better question for Corrie. I want to guess we're still in the 90 percentile, but it's just a guess. I'll let Corrie hit that. Do you have a good number? Or do you want me to make something up? 88%.
88%, that's darn close to 90, I have to say. On the short term, if you will, the 6-month certificates, I think we've had a report along the way of what the turnover is in the programs that we as the Topeka manages long term, and maybe Corrie, whoever can respond to what the chances are if the 28 households that get housed under this new short-term program need long-term rent subsidy, whether those certificates can be converted if there's a vacancy in the city's program.
I will defer that question.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you. Sergeant Klamm, I just wanted to know where we were at because, we're hearing that Burlington Northern or Atchison, whoever owns the facilities, is moving the homeless population out. Are they all cleared out then?
Not yet.
Okay. And do they have do they understand what's going to happen to them if they continue to stay?
The campers? Yes. So we've had multiple meetings. The Rescue Mission has allowed us to use their cafeteria on multiple occasions to where we can have basically large meetings with as many campers that are willing to show up. I want to say last time we were 30-some campers. We were able to relay information to everybody all at once. We told them about the relocation, that they were going to have to move. There were a lot of questions at that time which we didn't have answers to, as far as like property lines. The railroad has been down there marking all the property lines so they know exactly whose property is what. That's something the city is actually going to have to look at some point. Some of that is city property. And so, you know, if campers believe that they can stay there, I do see a lot of people potentially moving over to city property within the mix. But they've all been notified at those large meetings, and then after those meetings, the outreach individuals, we try to go out into the camps and catch anybody who didn't attend the meeting to make sure we relay all the same information, so it's not rumor mill. And like I said, we've had 2 or 3 of those, so they're all aware. A lot of them are just waiting for more information, whether it's housing, whether it's am I on city property or am I on railroad property. That's a big question for some of them. So things like that. So that information, as soon as we get it, we're pushing it out to them.
Do we have a deadline?
As far as I understand it, the bids that the railroad have put out bids for companies to come and demo the area, and in those bids it said that the leveling of the ground or of all the trees and everything will start on the 23rd of this month. So we have basically between now and the 23rd. I don't know when any type of actual eviction is going to occur. It has to happen on or before the 23rd. So.
Okay. That was just my concern, is I wanted everybody to understand this, seriousness in this.
Yeah, everybody's been told and everybody's aware.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
you for your work on this. And in a blanket sense, I'll probably say it again, but everybody who's here, because this really has been a team effort. You've been a wonderful leader for that. Corrie, do you want to provide anything else?
Sure. I just wanted to add that the funds are actually circling through Vallejo. So the city just signed a contract with Vallejo to receive the $100,000. So again, as Sergeant Klamm said, about 28 people for 6 months at full rent. Of course, if someone's not necessarily having to pay full rent because they have income, then we would be able to serve additional people. So it just depend on who's paying rent, or if we have to pay full rent for those 6 months. In regards to your question, Councilmember Hiller, since they will be housed, they will no longer be homeless. And so it'll be difficult for us to transition them from a unit that they're currently in straight into like Shelter Plus Care, for example. That program is probably on hold for another 6 months anyhow, so okay. I'm not for sure that would be the avenue, but so that's a challenge, but we have a lot of partners. Sergeant Klamm knows we have a lot of Vallejo, Dr. Burton, the rescue mission, everybody's kind of working together. We're hopeful that some of these, we're using a housing first approach with this $100,000, so services are not required. We're offering them, but they're not required to participate. That's been successful with our last Housing First initiative, and we're hopeful that it will be again. But Vallejo is offering SOAR applications for people to help get them on Social Security. So things will be, while they're in housing for 6 months, they will be offered an opportunity to do some extra stuff. So we're optimistic that hopefully we can get them in a situation by the end of the 6 months that they won't have to go back to a place not meant for human habitation.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. I'm glad that it's coming through you or through us so that it's all in the same place, which yes. I wasn't really clear on. I would think if there's really no Shelter Plus Care money expected to be available in the next 6 months, maybe it's pointless, but I would think you could get a waiver and have it just combined with that program and use the eligibility to carry through. But,
I could check on it.
If the setup is good the way it is, then I don't want to break it either.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sylvia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Corrie, can you tell me what the homeless task force, is there talk about what's going on? I'm sure there is, and what they're proposing to do, or what the conversation there is?
So the situation at Tent City is a standing item on the homeless task force agenda. So Sergeant Klamm and others give an update at every meeting. We have a meeting next week where we'll be talking more about the Housing First approach, which really just got initiated within the last week. We just signed contracts, received the money today, and so today we have all the news. The vouchers will be, which is brand new today, will be given out this week. And so we're excited about that. We're excited to share that with the people that are living on the river so they know they have some options coming up. The Homeless Task Force are the people that are all involved in this. And so the agencies like Vallejo and all the other agencies that are meeting at the rescue mission are members of the Homeless Task Force. So we're all trying to work together as best we can to help with the situation. It's just difficult. But now that we've secured, or Vallejo has secured the 100,000, that's helpful. Gives us a little bit more time to work with a few more people.
And how are we giving these out on a first come, first serve? I mean, how are we looking at this?
Good question. Yeah.
Because, what did he say, 45 people?
So the city is not selecting the people that will participate in the Housing First. That will be done by Vallejo. From my understanding, and this is what we've discussed today with representatives from Vallejo, is that the people that have shown up to the meetings at the rescue mission, the last 2 meetings, and have indicated that they would like to be housed are given priority. And so those people that have expressed an interest in housing are the first ones to get housing. And then from there, we'll make another determining factor if we have vouchers left over for the remaining folks.
Okay. Well, I would like to personally thank you, Sergeant Klamm, and Barry Feeker for always rescuing us. The rescue mission is really a rescue. Yeah, thank you. This isn't an easy task, but it's something that we've got to do, and I appreciate your work on that. And please relay that to the Homeless Task Force as well, because I'm going to continue to ask for updates, not let this go under our radar. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I want to go ahead and share that credit. We have some people from Tent City here and Dr. Burton, and I think that something that has been, I don't know if y'all expected it, I don't know that the community did, but the development of sense of community there and of people helping one another, both there in the Tent City and with these changes, has been pretty phenomenal. And hasn't gone unnoticed, so thank you for the efforts that all of you have made. Again, this was just to be an update today. Is there anyone else who has an update for us? Come on up to the mic, please.
And while she's coming to the city manager, they did put on our radar that we have city property down there. We're aware of that. Okay, so we'll need to. Thank you.
I'm Natasha Jackson. I live in Tent City. I have a question. I mean, some people don't want to move, though. They've made it, me, like myself, I made it really comfortable down there. And I'm building a home. And I want to know, is there anything I can do where I can stay on the property? I clean up all the time. And I don't want to move. I'm already comfortable where I'm at. And that's like doing a lot when I'm doing just fine where I'm at. And I'm pretty sure there's other people that don't want to move either. They've been out there for a while. Is there anything we can pay to stay or anything we can do for the community to be able to stay where we're at?
We could look for others to answer, but that's private property. And if those private property owners are, if that's what you're talking about, if you're on railroad property,
City.
If you're on city property, I think the city manager just indicated that this, they're clarifying lines, and there was an ordinance passed that, you help me out if I dig myself in a hole here, that defined certain public property that the city was not going to let people camp on, and it left the rest of it open.
Okay.
So clarifications have to be worked out. Pardon me?
We don't have to move if we don't want to.
That's my understanding.
Is there a way to allocate the funds so that I could get help getting me some more materials for a tiny home instead of using them for an apartment?
That's not what that program is for at this point. There certainly are people in the Homeless Task Force, and I'm watching Monique nodding her head back there against the back row. Folks that are looking at developing infill housing. There's been a lot of talk about tiny houses for a long time. It's interesting because I don't know how many people have seen it. I put it on my personal Facebook page for whatever that's worth, but checked with the planning director about the possibilities, whether we needed to create some new policy to do tiny homes in Topeka, or whether they were allowable by our current zoning. And his answer was yes, they are allowable. If somebody wanted to do something different, like putting a few of them on one lot or having them close to lot lines and things, just like with other things,
Built me a pretty
it
home.
might require what they call a planned unit development, where you draw a special plat and get it approved. But it's not impossible. So if you were
Okay.
aware, or others are aware, of folks
really
that are
wasn't
considering
aware.
that, it's not going to be tomorrow, but certainly there are possibilities.
Okay. I'm just asking because I started already building my own tiny home by myself, so that's why.
Well, we do have codes and so on, so,
Well, it ain't that big and it ain't that. It's in the guidelines.
all right.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Dr. Burton. And then we're going to wrap this up and. Neil?
Just wanted
Neil's
to
up.
comment on the particular situation, Tosh, is she's on city property, but then then it becomes the issue of how does one define camping on the levee? And I don't know what that actual definition is. She's not on top of the levee. She's next to the levee on city property. So I don't know exactly
We need to get that resolved.
how far away that's got to be from some point on the levee to be allowable. I don't know what that magical number is.
Excellent point. I don't think we thought we'd get to that this soon, did we? So city manager, we can get that checked out. I remember us challenging, many of you were here about, well, what does being on the levee mean? And changed the wording along the way, but yeah, we need to know.
Right. And I'm real excited about the 28 vouchers.
kidding.
And I think that's outstanding. I certainly hope that folks can be situated after 6 months. That is a big concern as to whether some folks will be able to jump through those kind of hoops to accomplish that in that kind of a time frame. So, but I'm sure we can. If they don't work out for folks, I'm sure we can figure something else out. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome, and thank you. With that, I think we'll move on. Thank you so much. Those of you who came for the homeless situation discussion are welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go. We're moving on to a discussion of team up to clean up in neighborhoods.
Just let them clear.
Pardon me?
I was just letting them clear out.
Okay.
So, Councilwoman Heller, Councilwoman Ortiz, thank you.
And if I can stop you just for a second,
Yes.
because I asked you to make an attempt to get hold of our third member. No answer?
Have not heard.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to go through some information regarding the team to clean up. Then you had some questions that you brought to us, and I think I can answer those, which are very good for the discussion as to what we're doing today versus what we were doing when it came to trying to make efforts to clean up the community. In 2018, we started a process of Team Up to Clean Up, which was the idea of bringing various city departments together in order to be able to have them have a part in what we do in our community in certain areas, certain neighborhoods, the intensive care neighborhoods. It came out of an idea that was actually talked about by Mike Haugen and some others in the Neighborhood Relations Department as an idea. So we brought the departments together and came up with, I think, is a unique program. We received an award for it from the state, from the League of Kansas Municipalities for it as a new project in the public safety area. So what does Team Up to Clean Up? Well, each department plays a little role in the process that we do with cleaning up a certain neighborhood. In the area of neighborhood relations, there's a lot that they're involved with. This is right up their wheelhouse as far as a project. For example, the Property Maintenance Division takes all of their inspectors and goes into an area and walks the streets and makes sure any particular properties that are involved that need that have a code violation, they receive a notice. And it's meant to make sure that we're addressing all areas with the whole idea of getting all in that particular neighborhood cleaned up, so that it's a situation of even little things that need to be addressed, that they get done. And the idea being is that you have a much better looking neighborhood when they're all done. Along the way, though, we also look at that there are ways potentially to provide assistance. We've offered volunteer service. We've started partnering with Habitat for Humanity on some of these locations where people that are receiving notifications that can't get out and do the work themselves. We try to work with them to find some partners to help them in those certain situations. So along with looking at what property maintenance is doing with regards to inspections, we also, Community Engagement Division is doing quite a lot. They have recently sent out a little postcard that has information about that we're planning to be in the neighborhood, so they're aware of it. So that if they have something that is something they've been thinking about fixing on their house, but they haven't got around to it, they would have an awareness that we're coming and that they should go ahead and take care of that particular issue before we get there. Of course, they'll have the normal notice times to be able to address things. So we also work with inmate crews to go in and help with some blight remediation, sidewalk panel repair, to do some minor improvements related to what's done. And along the way with all of that, we end up doing Monique's group and some others within the community engagement group have done walk and talk. So they take people from the neighborhood, from the NIA, along with them, they pair together and they go around the neighborhood and talk about the fact that this is what's coming and this is what we're doing in the neighborhood. Opens doors and really begins the conversation. Along with it, we've been doing a resource and career fair in partnership with the CRC this time around. That is going to be April 16th, 2020, from 6 to 8 at the Care Center. And that is something that we didn't initially do when we started Team Up to Clean Up, but we found it was an addition, that the idea that we wanted to make sure we were giving something to the community besides addressing some of the other things. It was an opportunity to give back, give them resources that they could count on. And so we partner with other organizations within the community that have resources that can help low-income individuals. And so they're there and available for them to answer questions or get access to resources. So that's coming up April 16th. We also offer community assessment and community building workshops to the NIA. And workshops are going to be offered by credit counseling in this particular one in the neighborhood. That's one of the things that is a kind of a tweak with this particular one that's coming up in Highcrest neighborhood, is being able to work with credit counseling more. Housing services, they're involved in the walk and talk, and they distribute programs, information related to, for example, the voluntary demo program, so that if owners qualify that they wouldn't have a house that they need to have demolished, they find out about that program. Also talk about the accessibility program. So if there's something that's preventing individuals from being able to stay in their home, potentially, like a ramp or some of these other types of things that qualify, they're able to access that program and learn about it. And Housing Services also participates in the resource fair. So those are a lot of the things, those are the things that Neighborhood Relations is doing, but there's also other departments. For example, the fire department has been very active in going door to door, offering to go into a house and install smoke alarms. It's one of the things they do very well. It's a very good outreach program for them, and this is an excellent opening for them to be able to get into some of these neighborhoods and offer the ability to have some smoke alarms installed. Along with that, in a partnership that we have with Kansas Gas, they offer to pay for the cost of numbers to put on the outdoors of many of these homes. We often find that a lot of homes in these neighborhoods are not numbered, and that is an important thing when it comes to safety response, that being able to find a particular home and know which home it is. And oftentimes that doesn't exist, so they assist with the installation. Kansas Gas buys the numbers. And so that's been a very good partnership with that program. Now, TPD, the police department works hard with the neighborhood, offering states, looking at the possibility of offering neighborhood watch information if there isn't one already formed. If there is, looking at training, make sure that their members are ready to go, along with Safe Streets and teaching the information about the Safe Watch. Plus, they've also done some additional patrolling in those neighborhoods during that time frame, trying to address certain areas where there may be issues. We've had animal control along with that has been out in the particular neighborhoods doing extra patrols in case there are issues related to dogs running loose in that area. And so it's been a partnership where they go out and assist in that way. Then you get into utilities. The utilities department, right now, they've even provided some numbers as to what they expect to look at doing. There are 192 valves in the neighborhood at Highcrest that we're looking at. So they'll be looking at exercising those valves, making sure that they're working. If they find they're not working, they'll schedule them for maintenance repair and go after that. And there's 61 water hydrants in that area. They'll do the same thing, checking to make sure that they're functioning. If they're not, they'll schedule them for work to replace. You know, we're in the middle of, right now, we're replacing our meters with automated meters. So one of the things they do is the neighborhood that's involved here, they will go in and change out every one of the meters to make sure that every meter in that particular neighborhood is up to date, which is good for the customer. And that way they have a consistent ability to determine if there are leaks, because we can check to see day-to-day usage whether there's a leak, which any type of a leak for some of these individuals can be very detrimental to their budget. We can only do so much if there's a leak. So this is an opportunity to help them to be able to address that. Well, also, there are 172 storm inlets in this particular area. They will go and do maintenance on those storm inlets to make sure that they're open and working, so that when we're having a rain event, that they're able to flow that water away from on the streets into that neighborhood. So those are some of the things utilities does. Zoning also gets involved. Zoning will go out into the neighborhood and look to see if there are any illegal businesses that are going on in that neighborhood. That can be a big issue for certain neighborhoods if they have extra cars that are parking in a particular area, clogging up an alley, those types of things. So going out and checking to make sure that the businesses are properly located. Not to mention, they look for any unpermitted structures, trailers, sheds, campers, garages that are not appropriate for that area, dumpsters, those kind of things, to make sure that we have a good, clean, clear neighborhood. Public Works also gets involved. They do some tree trimming in the neighborhood. We find that oftentimes some of these neighborhoods, the trees are overgrown, blocking stop signs and other types of signage that we have, or hanging low, brushing on trucks. And so we go in and do a good job of looking at our canopy in that particular area, and then our trees around the signs, and our forestry crew trims those up. So it gets it looking nice for that particular area. And if there's a dead tree on our right of way, we'll take care of it. Those types of things are what forestry does. Public Works also, our sign crew goes out and looks at what signs we have, our street signs, and if we have faded signs, we'll replace those signs and so forth. The key to all of this is that the work that's being done in Team Up to Clean Up is work that each of these departments or individuals do somewhere, wherever in town. We're not going in and doing anything special that we wouldn't do in another part of the community. We're just focusing it on this one neighborhood in order to, in the end, bring the whole neighborhood appearance up to a newer level, to a better level for that particular neighborhood. And it becomes a sense of pride. And right now we've done 4, and we can tell you that the feeling that we get from the neighborhoods, they're very thankful for what we've done and gone into that neighborhood and done. It doesn't come without a little bit of criticism, because as we go in and do code enforcement in those areas, it can be difficult. Some individuals will have to do some work in order to fix up their home, but that's no different than if they're a neighbor or us had driven by and saw that particular issue, we would have cited them anyway. It's just that when we go into the neighborhood, we definitely do our due diligence and look at each of those. And so that's the program in a nutshell. One of the things, there were some questions that were asked, and why is this different compared to what we've done in the past? In the past, there was a program that was, let's see, where's that called? The Curb Your Clutter. I remember that was the right type. The difference in that program was everybody bring it out of your house or your back of your yard and put it out to the curb, and we'll come by and pick it up. Well, that program was subject to a lot of abuse. I saw pictures when I got here when we started looking at doing something different of heaping mounds of trash that was next to the roadway that we were responsible for picking up. And on top of it, oftentimes was somebody decided to gut their basement and they took all of their junk they gutted out of their basement to the curb and set it out. That's not the purpose of that program, and it began to be abused. It would take weeks and weeks for our staff with Shawnee County waste people to go and use their dump truck or their trash trucks to remove all that stuff. It just wasn't solving the true purpose of what we wanted to do, which was to make our neighborhoods better. Not to mention, it was getting to be very costly when we looked at all the overtime and the other expenses related to the disposal of the waste. And so that was something that was a hindrance to now. So for right now, the program is different in the sense that we're going after the bigger concerns. We're still addressing trash in the neighborhood, but it's looking at what's outside and what we're going to be able to do to be able to make a difference, fixing individual homes, looking at each in a particular neighborhood. It does limit our program a little bit from the standpoint of we're only doing 2 neighborhoods a year versus doing the whole community. But I think for the cost and effort, it ends up being better. Because it ends up being the departments use their own funds that they would normally use for the rest of their duty. It ends up costing us no more than it would cost any other normal business. So we don't have an added expense like we did with the last program. Our goals here are mainly to try and clean up this particular neighborhood versus cleaning up the whole town. I think that it's a much more holistic approach, and the other advantage is that it involves the individuals from the neighborhood, from the NIA. They're involved, and what we found is the more that the NIA members are involved, the more successful we end up being with the program in that neighborhood. If they're going around doing the walk and talks with us, if they're at the resource fair and other types of events and communicating with their neighbors, we end up having much more success. The question was asked, staff hours. Right now, a couple of them ranged anywhere from about almost 1,500 hours down to about 1,300 hours of actual staff time that was used. But like I said, this is normal hours. It's not overtime. It's just normal hours. This is where we put our focus. We initially tried to do 2 of them. In 18, we did them basically a month apart through the summer. We found that doesn't work. Staff's so busy in the summer, so much going on, that it really was better for us to separate them and to do one in the spring and then do one in the fall. And so that's what we shifted to in 19, and it did make a difference. We're able to be much more responsive throughout the year rather than trying to cram it into the summer, which is our busiest time of year. So I think that answers most of the questions that Councilwoman Hiller had brought up and or others. So I guess I'll answer any questions, anything I missed.
If before we open it up for specific questions, you could talk about even lessons learned from that 2018 to 2019 to this year. You've mentioned some, but that it has changed even internally.
Right, it has. And we've done a much better job of getting notification out ahead of time to ensure that the neighborhood is aware that this is coming. We've had pre-meetings months in advance with the NIA officers to ensure that they're ready to go for the program, helping to educate them on what Team Up to Cleanup is and isn't, so we can set their expectations as to what we're going to be doing when we come in. I think the resource fair has been probably another big change that we've seen to be a positive. It helps give us a very non-confrontational, friendly atmosphere to be able to meet with neighbors if they want to come in and get to know us and look at what we have available for them.
Okay. So, welcome, Councilman.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. True story.
Oh, good.
I was upstairs in the planning conference room, sitting there talking to Fyander, and the clock kept saying 3:15. I thought I had 15 minutes. I finally realized
Replace the battery.
the clock wasn't working, so sorry about
All right.
that. But
That's all right. You were in the right spot, though.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good story. We'll take it. All right. Glad you're here. Some specific questions.
I'm serious. You can check it out.
She might.
One of my, if I may,
Please.
okay. So on your cleanup, does this offer trash cleanup to all the residents?
Well, it
Because,
ends
you know,
up,
in the past, we've had drag it to the curb so that residents could do that. Well, so how do we determine who has trash? And I understand what you're talking about, the landlords that dumped everything to the curb, or the tenant
Yeah.
that waits or whatever. But what about the people that has trash? How do they get rid of their trash?
well, one of the things that we determined with this that I didn't know, even with my own, when I got my own trash service here, that typically most of the trash services allow you to take one big item to the curb each week. You can have a full dumpster, your full bin of stuff, and maybe even then some that they'll take, and then they'll take the large item. So those things that in the past maybe they just like, well, how am I going to get rid of this? They found that the haulers they have a program set up to be able to take that away. And for them, they would much rather take one big item every week, if a person had such a thing, than to try and go out and tackle a huge pile that they've been saving up for months to get rid of. And it's working better with regards to their flow of how much they have within their trash.
Well, and I have never, so when I hear people say, you know, I couldn't get rid of this or that, my trash guys are good. They'll take anything. And sometimes they probably take more than what they should. But I was just thinking about if we're helping people in different areas that have hoarding or something like that, or a veteran or something like that, how are we helping them? You know, because that would be stuff that they would need to get rid of. And so that was a concern to me. Another concern is, I think the program's great. My area covers a lot of low to moderate income areas, and I'm just concerned is, are we cleaning this up and we're forgetting about this area? You know, are they still allowed to drag it to the curb? Because, you know, we've called it a lot of different things. And I know I'm liking the process of when you say, well, we're talking to the NIA presidents, because that wasn't being done before. And I'll use Oakland as an example. When they had their cleanups, they got dumpsters, and they took their stuff to the dumpsters. And then we did drag it to the curb, so you had residents of years that did it, and guess what? They couldn't even get to East Topeka because they were going through picking up so much in Oakland. So my thing is, if that conversation was had, we would have realized that not everybody could drag it to the curb, that they were taking it to the dumpster. So now you're saying drag it to the curb, and people were taking advantage of that. So that's just some concerns that I have. I just don't want to make sure, because I know that East Topeka South, East Topeka North, and East End has done a good job of trying to keep up their trash pickups to make sure that we get all of that out, and we get it all out of our neighborhoods. I don't know who is over the inmate crew, but I have seen them personally here recently up and down the streets looking for things and picking things up. And I commend them for that, because we get dumped on a lot when we don't have those pickups.
All right. Two things. Like I said, most of the trash services are allowing them to put out large items, which I think is helping that. And it's an easy response for us. To contact your hauler, you're more than likely find out that that sofa or that set of mattresses, you can get rid of them, a week. You're not supposed to pile a whole thing of them, but slowly work your way through whatever you have. The other thing is for example, the Ward Mead neighborhood, they actually did buy a couple of dumpsters, and I happened to be there for the volunteer day when it rained, so we didn't get quite as far as I think we might have been able to, but there was a lot of trash and a lot of debris, the landscaping debris and other things that were put into those dumpsters. And the volunteers went with pickups, picked up the stuff that individuals had put out to the curb, and then hauled it to the dumpster. And so I think that ended up being a very good solution.
So they're able to still purchase dumpsters with their.
Yeah, they have
Okay.
funds that they can use for that. And I think that's a good combination as well, so that if you really want to make a big sweep through your particular ward meet, in this case neighborhood, it allowed them an opportunity to be able to do so.
What about our conversations with the Shawnee County? Because it's always unclear of what we can put out or how many big items. That's always a question. And I think, Mike, I don't know if you hear that at your NIAs, but I do. And people say, no, we can't. Yes, we can. To maybe see if they could put something out, like a flyer or something. Because I know that like recliners, they won't take that because of the metal that's in there unless they just change that. So I can go down my street and I can see all these recliners because of the metals, or the sofa beds because of the metal in it. And so I just think it needs to be very clear if we're, and I think that's great that we're turning this over to our constituents, but they need to know that they've got to take that out, because I've seen hide-a-beds and then here comes the inmate crew and it's sat there 4 or 5 days, or 4 or 5 weeks, you know. So I just think we need to make that, and I don't know if that's something we can ask them if they would, since they are a partner, if they could help us do.
They sent a letter every year, and in that letter, it tells you that. It tells you you take an item out. It probably doesn't go to specifics of every type of item, because they can't imagine it. Hide-a-beds are one that are too heavy. You know, they just can't pick them up and throw them in there.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll get with them and clarify, and then we can put out, we have a lot of communication channels within neighborhood relations, and we can get that information.
I'm not asking them to do everything, but I am asking them to do, to just give us something. I can give you a list of what I see out there, you know, all the time, random.
I think the county, I'll speak for that because I've worked on it myself and I've worked on it with my neighborhoods. The county's real clear about it. I mean, even when they send that annual postcard, I think it's on there. You know, the one that has the holidays on it and so on, and has the basic services. And everybody who, I don't know if Waste Management and the others do it, but the county does. They're very good on answering the phone. You can put something out once a week, except on a holiday week. And I know I began telling my neighborhoods that, because they would get so frustrated when code would come out and write somebody up or having stuff, and then somebody had dumped it on the back of their property, and everybody's just mad at everybody. And, you know, I'm saying, hey, how many people have county service on your alley? Put the mattress here, put the, you know, just do it, you know, or, you know, feed it out. And it began to solve, at least in my neighborhoods, a number of the painful reactions to when somebody had stuff dumped on their property also. And I'm really pleased to hear that the staff is starting to put that out. I think one of the things that's concerned me is that you know, my goal is self-sufficiency. My goal is the less city involvement, the better. Not that because the more we take on cutting people's trees for them, cutting their weeds for them, picking up their trash for them, the more people, and I've shared this with some of you, begin to think that that's a city service. And so they don't take that responsibility themselves because they see the city stepping in elsewhere. And I also personally am very oriented toward building the neighborhoods. And so your example at Ward Mead, you know, and the way we used to do the cleanups long before Curb Your Clutter was the neighborhoods could just arrange with the county. And at that time, the county would do it for free to have a cleanup. And the only people that worked on that, the staff wasn't even there, was the neighborhood themselves had to get organized, kind of like Ward Mead did, and get everybody notified and get out there and walk with that truck and go clean out somebody's yard. And those really built those neighborhoods in those days. And so it's troubled me to see the city, for instance, doing Curb Your Clutter. That killed all the neighborhood cleanups because it didn't require anybody to help anybody anymore. Then the city just complained. And so I think that it, you know, and if somebody finally cleaned out their basement because they thought somebody would pick it up, what's the matter with that? You know, they got invited to do it and it probably needed to be done. So I think where this is moving as far as the engaging the neighborhoods and the city talking about the different options is much healthier in the long run. So I really applaud that progress. and I hope we keep doing more of that. I mean, Chesney Park is still hosting a free, every Saturday morning, I think it is, you know, you can go down near the fairgrounds and dump until it's full.
Yes.
And so we don't need to do those extra cleanups if everybody knows they need to just find somebody with a pickup and get something delivered. And in fact, they'll pick up those recliners as long as you take them apart. Because they can't crunch the thing whole in the truck either. Because I think the instructions are you just have to take the metal works out. I mean, that's kind of hard to do, but on the other hand, you just need a screwdriver.
Or a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Or a chainsaw,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, more fun.
One thing I do want to draw attention to on the back screen there is a web page on our city site that deals with Team Up to Clean Up. The information regarding the 4 neighborhoods that have been done is there. It tells you how many things we were able to accomplish. But the bottom has historic Old Town and Central Park numbers, and then at the top of that page, there's Ward Mead and East End. Would you click on one of the ones from Ward Mead there? So it has a report that was done that outlines all of the things that were done in the neighborhood, shows the area that was taken care of. Keep scrolling down. So there's some numbers with regards to work that was done, trees removed, trees trimmed, police, what hours they did, things that they did on that. Fire installed 47 smoke detectors. So it outlines that, and then it's in a different. This is our morphed product. And then it shows some of the partners that we worked with along the way to get it done. So that's, I think, actually, Councilwoman Heller, that's probably one of the biggest things that's happened is that from where we started doing it just with us as staff to now where we have many more organizations that are involved with us, either through things they do during the event or at the resource fair. So it's been a big change.
How would you say that the engagement, you've talked about it in general terms, but how would you say that the engagement of the neighborhoods themselves has grown? And
I think
from
it's
like one person who was the NIA chair to how many?
Well, I think probably Monique would be better able to answer that involvement question because she's the one that works with them. And so if she could come forward, I'd appreciate it.
If you don't mind, City Manager, if I could also provide 2 points of clarification to the committee. In regards to cleanups, neighbor cleanups, Shawnee County is still a very admirable partner, and they're allowing each neighborhood, regardless of their NIA, NA, 2 free dumpsters, 40-yard dumpsters on an annual basis. So that's an opportunity for them. And then also, as it was alluded to, Councilmember Ortiz, they can also then therefore utilize their neighborhood services funding if they'd like to. The NIAs can at that particular time. Also, Councilmember, we are providing the NIA officers with weekly communications, and I will assure you that tomorrow morning I'll obtain the infographic or the flyer from Shawnee County Waste in regard to the dumpsters and provide that to them as well to make sure that they have that information. In regards to answering the question of the increase of participation from neighbors within Team Up to Clean Up, I would say probably 30%, and all of that is dependent upon the neighborhood's involvement. When we do a walk and talk, we do not do a walk and talk unless the NIA officers are with us, and the reason being is because no one cares about the city coming to knock on your door. They care about their neighbor being there, and we just did one in Central Park last Thursday. So when we have neighborhoods that are more involved, the neighbor leaders, we really get a year later, we can see the continued involvement. This is not the only time we do walk and talks. We will do a walk and talk with NIAs anytime they ask us. Myself or my team will be more than happy. Mike's team helps. Corrie's team helps. So we'll be more than happy to go knock on doors. It's just we want to do it with a neighbor so we don't seem intrusive. We want to always be seen as a partner.
Well, that's why I asked, because it does make a difference.
Yes,
Plus, even with all these, the partners, and I'm not being critical because what you're doing is showing them what they could do with this one way or another. But if the city goes out and lines up all the partners, then the neighborhoods won't.
Absolutely.
Because it gets done for them.
So if I could just provide a little bit of clarification on that for the resource fair. I am not intrusive and I do not select the partners. We meet with, Mike and I met with both High Crest and Historic North Topeka East in January to talk about the Team Up to Clean Up events that were taking place. And we asked, what are specific needs that you're seeing that your neighbors have so I can secure those partners? And so we make the ask first, and then we secure the partners. And that's how we come up with our participants of the resource fair.
And does that, I've been involved with some of those. And the very first one, there was the only neighborhood person that was involved was the president. And it made a difference when the volunteers came out. When the volunteers came out, I'm not sure I heard you mention volunteers coming out to help on any of these later ones.
So if there's a need for volunteers, that's a connection that we make with the neighborhood officers. We remove ourselves from that. We will make the introduction, and then we allow them to take care of that. So we're not managing projects for them or getting in the way of our schedules with theirs. So we'll make that relationship with them and provide them with volunteer groups if we are notified of any, but otherwise we allow them to handle the management of the volunteer project.
So, and I know it's evolutionary, but that's one of the reasons I asked the question.
Sure.
So with the volunteers, if they want certain projects, you'll give them some leads. But if it comes to the partners to providing things, you still take care of that.
Can you be more specific for me, please?
Well, all those people.
All of those people were partners from the resource fair point, except for with exclusion of Ace Hardware. I believe that Ace maybe, what did you know what they provided? Numbers? Yes, housing numbers. The rest of those partners up there, ma'am, are for the resource fair.
I misunderstood.
That's quite all right.
Because you were talking about, what did they want, and then you'd go out and get it.
Sure, for the resource fair.
That's just the resource fair,
Yes.
which is
Now, if there are
new.
other specific needs, absolutely we'll help to identify and make that relationship with them. But, yes.
But the resource fairs are new in 2020, right?
The resource fair started in 19.
They did, okay.
Yes. The only thing new on my division's portion for this year is credit counseling and student loan default counseling as well.
Always good.
Yes.
Monique, now you've been around a long time.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I don't mean you're old or nothing.
That's
but
all
you
right.
just-
That's okay. I started when I was 5.
We're all sensitive to that.
But we've had this discussion before when we got the whole town involved.
Yes, ma'am.
How can we get back to that, even if we're going to stick to different areas?
So my response to you, Councilmember, would be is that we have to find those volunteers all around town in each neighborhood that really are able to commit to be able to be involved for the effort. It's wonderful to have one or two, but then life happens and their schedule gets busy and then there's no representation from a neighborhood. So I am always very grateful for the neighborhood volunteers out there because they're volunteers and I totally respect that. But we really need the millennials, we need the high school students, we need the college students, we need our wiser neighbors. We need everyone to say this is our community and we want to help and we're going to be able to give 5 hours, 10 hours, 6 hours a month or whatever it is. So we really need an all call and I think it would be very helpful. It's always helpful when you, the leaders of our community, make those calls out as well. And I'll accept any help with volunteerism as much as possible in our neighborhoods.
Well, and what I liked about it is we had somebody donating a lunch.
Yes.
We had a big tent, where everybody could go and gather afterwards. We had a meeting point where they could pick up their duties. And I liked it that we are taking police officers, just anybody who wants, because there's so many people out there, and I can't stress this, that want to volunteer. They just want to know what to do. Sure. And when we had those people going in our neighbors, because High Crest is a part of me, but it's still my neighbor. And when we start caring about our neighbors, that's, you don't know what's in my backyard until you come.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, Councilmember, a point of clarification for me is that you're speaking about takeover makeover that we used to do probably about 14 years ago when I first came on. And really the problem that happened there is that the neighborhoods couldn't find projects for us to come and to have volunteers do. So that last year was absolutely horrific that we had volunteers, just about 100 of them walking around trying to find things to do. So I think it would always be helpful if a neighborhood could find a project, identify the needs of it, and then say, this is the problem that we have, and then allow us to figure out to see what tools are needed and to do an all-call. I will definitely do an all-call for volunteers if I know of a specific project.
Well, and I think that would be good since it's on a smaller scale, that we could maybe find, that was a whole East Topeka, a whole West Topeka. If it was on a smaller scale, that we can maybe pinpoint it directly and then make that all call. Because I just think it's great that we go back and forth and get in these neighborhoods and get, I worked with officers before and they liked it that we took this bush down because from their eye view angle, we can see people when they're running. From the fire department, from their angle, they like that house number. So just so everybody's a part and a part of being Topeka proud.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I go back even before that, and Sylvia was a little bit younger than I am, maybe. Anyway.
Wiser, that's what, you're supposed to say wiser.
Well, we used to do just plain old neighborhood cleanups.
Yep.
And we'd just walk next to that trash truck. We'd have our own rakes, our own gloves. We'd just go knock on Mrs. So-and-so's door and say, can we clean out your yard? She would say yes, we would do it. We didn't worry about all these permission slips and a bunch of staff to organize anything. And then we'd go down to a neighborhood church and have hot dogs and Jell-O, which was good enough, that somebody put together at the church. And the more it got organized by the city, the less engagement there was in our neighborhood. Starting with takeover, makeover, certainly take it to the curb. And even now with the team up to cleanup, I go back to when we didn't have any money and we didn't have anything. And so the staff kind of helped us call the county, see if they'd run the truck. But other than that, besides encouragement, we were on our own. And in many ways, the neighborhoods did more. And so as I watch it and I look at, of course, now I'm in the position where I'm looking at the budget and looking at how much staff we have and what promises we make, but also what people's expectations are of city government. I wonder sometimes did we go too far with the best of intentions? We used to do the turnaround team used to do cleanups with Washburn students, got them all organized up and figured it out, and then when we had a better idea of the tool van and this and that and the other thing, it all just kind of fizzled out. And it was like, how did that happen? We haven't done one, 10 years maybe, Monique? It's been a
So
long
I am
time.
here to serve. Whatever program is there is what I will do and find our community partners to be able to help us with the efforts.
I think I'm hopeful that this is a leading question to an answer that's already underway. Is there more training going on or opportunities for neighborhood folks and maybe your staff as well to do more in terms of developing self-sufficiency in neighborhoods? Internal growth and organization building, that kind of thing.
So we are taking 10 neighborhood leaders to Noosa this year in May. For that sole reason, so they can be around other neighborhood leaders across the country to be able to see what they're doing to be self-sufficient as well. I am always seeking opportunities to provide training to the neighborhood leaders as well as my team to be able to see what we can do better to be more engaged with all of our neighbors.
And is it Noosa that we started sending people 2 years ago? With
Yes,
No Cushion
when I
Dairy?
first came, it was Noosa, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right,
absolutely.
thank you.
What is NUSA?
Neighborhood USA, I apologize, and the acronym is NUSA. And so NUSA is just a gathering. I think they'll be together 4 days this year in Little Rock, Arkansas in May. And it's neighborhood leaders from across the country that will come together to talk about what they've been doing in their respective neighborhoods to address the issues or concerns they have in those neighborhoods. And most of them are from metropolitan cities that have some really pretty atrocious issues, but they have come up with wonderful solutions and they're just sharing it out.
Wow, that's neat.
Yes.
It's good
We're
to
taking
hear.
some of our Mayor's Council, Topeka Mayor's Council, Youth Council members, and the Topeka Youth Commission. We're taking 2 of those young people with us as well.
Councilwoman? Back to what Team Up to Cleanup did. This might be a question for City Manager Trout. When you talked about the utilities, at one point, I think that the utility staff also went and scoped sewers. Wrote people up about their sewers.
There has been some work in that area too. Yeah, I did miss that on the list. There has been work that's been done by our wastewater folks looking at particular televising certain sewers that they have had concerns or doing their yearly maintenance clean out if they have an area they know they have to clean out on a regular basis.
So that hasn't been neighborhood-wide, that's just been targeted within a neighborhood?
Right, but if you look, they have a list of places they know they need to clean out periodically in order to keep things working within their system. So that's part of their normal protocols. They identify those from time to time and put them on a list, and they know they need to go with their vac truck and clean areas.
So how'd that go?
How did it go?
Yeah.
As far as I know, fine.
I mean, I had somebody, they did the second 1100 block of Lincoln in Central Park, and people were just panicked. And I've also heard they did it in Oakland and really threw a lot of people, unless that wasn't the same thing.
No, that's not the same thing.
Okay.
No, that wasn't related to this at all. That's a different operation, and
Okay.
we've adjusted fire on that.
I just want to make sure when we're doing this with the best of intentions that we're not.
Yeah, no, when we're looking at it, we're looking to see that they have flow and that there's not material that's left behind. That's in regards to team to clean up, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, and so do you have numbers on how many people have been written up and how many
Not in
resolutions
that area, no.
were taken care of?
I don't.
Okay. Those
I'd
are
have to-
pretty
I'd have to
expensive, as
ask.
we know.
Right, and one of the things that we're needing to address related to that is that sometimes people misunderstand. In that particular case, which is not related to the team to cleanup effort, that is to address a particular issue related to the why and where it connects to the city's sewer. We're not asking them to replace their whole sewer line. I think there was a misunderstanding related to that. It's simply the connection point that's bad. They can do what they want related to the rest of their sewer and when they want to decide to replace their service line. We're only concerned about the connection to the city because that's where, if it's not right, infiltration can occur within our sewer, and that's what we're trying.
I've had a couple of those too. I was not aware of the specifics. It just sounded like maybe it had been that
It's been a
sort of
misunderstanding.
unilateral, let's go check out your sewer line.
It was a misunderstanding with regards to the amount of repair that was necessary.
Well, the Y ones are tough.
The Y is a specific area and oftentimes is a smaller hole. It's not your whole line, which is where the huge expense comes.
Well, you still got to get to it.
Yeah, but usually you can do a spot repair and you're not digging up a whole trench line. So,
Question is, why or why not?
hey, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Good
Well,
one.
that was exactly what my constituent thought, because she'd had to do $8,000 worth of sewer repairs 2 years before, and hers was running fine as far as she knew. So, my understanding was it had been part of that
Yeah,
team up to
it's-
clean up. Other questions about the team up to clean up itself, or as Councilwoman Ortiz brought in some of the other cleanup programs that have either been done or proposed?
No question.
Okay.
The other thing I was thinking of when Monique was up here, one of the things that's happened in our neighborhood recently in the last few years is the Share Fest effort. I think that's had an impact on the amount of things that we've had to look at doing within the community to help neighborhoods. And that Share Fest organization, they're cleaning up schools, they're cleaning up the library. There's multiple locations around the city that volunteers are getting out and doing what amounts to a spring cleanup for everything from painting to, and it's made a difference, and that's where a lot of the volunteer effort to improve the appearance of the community and some of our public structures and things like that within the community has gone, and I think that's part of where some of these volunteers' efforts are going right now as far as large group efforts. It's coming up April 25th, I believe, this year.
That's good to bring that up.
So, yeah,
because
if you
we
go to
want
Share
do more of
Fest-
those kinds of things, you
Yeah,
look at the
because,
ones.
for example,
working.
even one of the ones on the list is there's a group that's going to clean in front of the Police Memorial Union, in front of the Law Enforcement Center. They're going to do, maintenance and cleanup along those areas. So that's one of the things that's kind of changing.
All right.
What about, if I may, what about Keep America Beautiful? Are they just quiet, or?
They're still involved in a number of things. I think they've been more involved lately with the county, working with the county on some things throughout the community and our parks and so forth. So I've seen them involved in some things with the county. They're still a pretty strong program. We don't fund them anymore, but we still think they're a great program.
And that was why I asked, because I know we don't fund them, so I didn't know, the involvement.
Right.
Thank you.
Along the lines of what you said, I know that when we had people who had leftover stuff after Curb Your Clutter, or who just needed something gone, or maybe had a pile of brush that got written up by code that either got put there by somebody else or that they couldn't manage, Keep America Beautiful, you could call them up, and instead of worrying about a whole lot of stuff, they'd just send somebody over and pick it
I
up,
see.
which was really nice. They were a great complement to the more organized programs. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for the time.
We have next on our agenda some staff reports, and I don't know who, there were 3 in particular that were still on deck after our last meeting. City manager offered to do some research about fines, dollars actually collected. Okay, so there's that report. Then, Mike, you had reported that you were working on trying to pull some numbers out of whether your postcard mailing had been successful for your people that didn't mow.
You ready for me?
I am. And then also there was discussion about bringing the resource lists, and it looks like that might have slipped by, but maybe we can do it next time.
So I'll start with the postcards. It's kind of tough to judge if they were effective or not because of the big difference in the amount of properties we cited for weed growth in 2017, 2018, and 2019. In 2017, we only cited 3,070 cases for weeds. And so then when we mailed out for our repeat offenders in 2018, we only mailed out 1,327 postcards, but we did 5,400 weed cases in 2018. So there was a significant increase. And then when we turned around in 2019, it went from 1,327 postcards to 1,783, which, if you just look at the amount of cards we wrote, it would seem that nobody listened to us because we sent out 500 more cards. But when you look at the years and the weeds, we doubled our weed production cases the year before. So it's really tough to tell if the notice that we send via postcard on the weeds makes a difference or if people adhere to it. But that's just a significant number change for the amount of weed cases we have. And that has to do with how the year goes, the rainy season, the dry season. And 2019, we only had 3,200 cases for weeds, but we were running 400 cases backlogged with the same crews as we had in 2017 and 2018. In 2017 and 2018, they pretty much kept up. They'd fall behind in July, but they kept up. But when you throw in how the weather goes and the rain, they can't mow in the rain, they can't mow when it's too muddy, they can't do a lot of things. And 2019 season really prevented them from being effective in their mowing. So we were running 400 cases behind. So I can't tell you for sure if the postcards made a difference or got people to comply. I can't imagine they didn't. There's a lot of people that take pride in their yards that fell behind, and we cited them. That you send them a card like that, they're going to make sure that it never happens again. I know that if I got that card, my lawn would be mowed for the rest of its life. I wouldn't want to see one again. So I don't have a straight answer for you on that.
Let me stop you then, because I couldn't keep up with your numbers for one
Sure.
thing. So I might get you to repeat them, but I wasn't sure how you were going to do your comparison. Were you able to get the computer to take the names of the people or the addresses and see whether they appeared again in the following year?
We hadn't broke that down if they appeared again.
I would think that's how you would know whether those offenders showed up again.
Yeah, but with 1 year, we're not going to be able to tell a difference. We would have to break down multiple years to figure out if the postcard made a difference.
I was only asking because if the people who were the offenders the year before, let's say of your year that you had 3,070 abatements, if the people the 1,327 people you mailed postcards to, if only 40 of them showed up the following year,
Sure.
then you would know.
Yeah, that's going to be going over each and every single case and matching them up, and we didn't do that.
I didn't know if
Yeah.
you changed record systems, I know, but
That's the other thing.
that would be the way to tell, I
Yeah, in
think.
2018, we had 2 separate record systems going right through the weed season. So to pull all those numbers together and to get the information out of the one that we let go is quite labor intensive. And so we didn't.
Might check with IT, see if they know how to.
We've worked with
You
IT
did,
on
okay.
all that stuff, yes.
All right.
All right, and then I found a cost breakdown for what we build out and what we receive back. And we use the year 2017 because 2018 was the year we switched from MyGov to CityWorks back to MyGov, and it's just going to be convoluted, the numbers. But 2017 is a complete year, and it's also a year we're still collecting money from 2017. And
Sure.
we're collecting money from 2012 that collections goes out and still gets. But so in 2017, we billed out $993,000 in abatement, fines, fees, and penalties. Not fines, fees and penalties. We collected $323,000, so 1/3 was people paid us. Collections went out and collections collected $95,000 in 2017, but you have to remember they didn't collect 2017 numbers. They collected 2012 through 2016 and part of 2017. Collections doesn't even take effect for 2017 numbers until 2018. So the money they collected was for previous years. When we asked if they could break it down of what for 2017, they said no, they sent a lump sum check. They just collect it all and they send it. But if it's $95,000 in 2017, it's probably within a $10,000 each year, 2018, 2016. So you're looking at that. And then the collections ended up with the people they went after, they waived $58,000 worth of fines and fees. And that's going to be properties that sold, properties where the people died, and there's no way for them to collect the money. They're going to collect the money, they can collect the money. So they waived out $58,000. So we're bringing in about half of what we find out. I think that was the question you wanted to know, of what we're collecting.
Yeah, now your abatements will go on the taxes, right?
Yes. If they don't pay, yes.
Right.
So we asked the county if they would tell us, and we didn't get a straight answer. We asked, they said, we're not really sure what we did per year. I don't have an answer for the county's taxes of what they paid the city. And they would have paid finance, they wouldn't have paid us.
What are we trying to figure out here?
Return on how much we're actually getting back. And in my view, it's not only money, but it also, and cost effectiveness of the program, but also is this gets back even to the postcards. Are those penalties working?
So without finding out what Shawnee County paid the city on behalf of code enforcement, because you have other city departments that the county has penalties as well. So they're just sending a lump sum check for the water department's collections fees, forestry's collection fees, our collection fees. So that's why I don't think it got found out, or where they could break it down. But if you looked at, we know that through collections, through payments, and through the waiver, that over half of what we billed out got paid back. Tack in whatever it is that Shawnee County collected on their taxes, it's going to get a lot higher than 50%.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You said you billed out $993,000.
Right.
And you collected?
We collected 323.
323.
Collections collected 95,000 for that year.
Is that what they collected or what they paid us?
That's what I believe they paid us. I got you. Yeah, because they take their little percentage
And that was
too.
for prior years, not necessarily
That's
for 2017 at all.
No, correct. So, and I didn't.
But it's close. It gives you an idea.
That gives you an idea, correct.
Annualized. Well, that's still not quite half yet, but we're getting there.
No, and then you have to look at 58,000 was waived off because of issues of dead parties or people they can't collect from. That's just from collections alone.
Okay.
And then you take a look at Shawnee County tax, whatever we collected from them, then it does go over half.
And you were looking only for code compliance. So if forestry or somebody else billed people, forestry billed people for, trying to think of our list that emerged in the conversation for cutting down trees and shrubs on the alley that they'd been written up for, you don't have that record. And,
No.
right now, police isn't charging for securing property, so if they go out, it's not even billed, right?
I can't answer for the police. Anything, so I found out after I think 2 meetings ago, if forestry helps us or the street department helps us, they then tell us how much it costs and we do bill for that.
Okay, so you bill on their behalf.
Correct. When they participate with us. If they're doing something on their own, like if they're clearing an alley and we didn't bring them in, I can't answer for forestry what they do, how they bill that.
So any bills that they had given to you would have been part of that 993,000?
It would have been part of the fees and services, yes.
Question.
Yes.
I guess I don't understand where we're going with this. I mean, there's really no return on it. We're not investing, right? We either do this or we don't do this. We levy fines, we try to recoup money, but it's not an investment. That's like saying, how much money does the fire department get for putting fires out, right?
I think, part of where I go with this, it's not
Right.
just me, is that there ends up being confusion about whether some of these things are a city service that people should expect us to do and should not expect themselves to do, and or a sense on people's part that anytime they turn in something, that it's not going to cost the taxpayers any money, that that people are going to pay. And for us, as we're looking at this whole picture, to have an idea about how much we actually get back on those services, the staff has worked pretty hard over the years to, and I've been involved with it a long time, so that gives me some too much history probably, but used to be that staff didn't charge, for the abatements were very minimal. We weren't getting our money back on what we spent. Now, state law governs what you can bill for an abatement, but we weren't charging reasonably for our own time for the admin
I get
fees,
it.
and they are now.
So what do we budget for this? How do we determine the budget for this?
I don't have an answer for you asking me that cold.
Because that's the question. If it costs us $1 million to do this and we only get 300,000, are we budgeting 700,000 every year?
Well, yeah,
That's based on, maybe that's a question you're asking. How do we
Kind
know
of
what
where
we're
I'm
getting
going
back?
for this, how much is
But
a
it's
city
not-
service?
Yeah. Well, but
Yeah.
not a return on investment.
Correct.
An idea of how to budget for it.
Right, we know that there's a certain amount of this type of work that we're going to need to do in a given year.
Right.
And so if it is $1 million, just play with that number to do this particular action of abating these particular issues between weeds, the costs that we have for our abatement crews from the inmates, et cetera. We pull up that budget, and that's what we have for a charge to be able to manage that responsibility we have. Then whatever fines, et cetera, that we get that are paid back is going to be a miscellaneous revenue
Right.
within the city's account. And so that goes as a revenue towards, and so we budget the cost to manage the program, and then we have the other expense.
I get that. My question is, how do you determine what the revenue is going to, how do you estimate the revenue?
I think that's one of the things that we struggle with a lot, is figuring out what the revenue is going to be, because it's going to be so infrequent, can vary quite a bit from year to year.
Okay.
Can depend on the number that we have that actually are willing to help and the number that we're actually charging. And so we really don't. I mean, we try to use prior history as much and do averages, as I think is the answer that I give you. Is
That's
we're doing an average over the years as to how much we were able to collect and how much it cost us.
Okay,
And
that makes sense. Thank you.
what drives that question for me a little more is on two bases. It seems fair that we, as this in our roles as city council people, understand what this is costing the city, that it's not being reimbursed by the payments if it's not, and also when we do an RPI on how to save some time, but how to expedite the mowing,
A rapid process improvement.
a management.
Do that quickly, or?
Yeah, that is a program that I bought to analyze each process that we do within the city to determine if we can do it better, how we can do it better.
And when we do that, to see how we can expedite the process so we can get out and get the second and third mowings in a season done more quickly. If in fact those folks are never paying us, and if we're not charging enough to disincentivize the folks who think $400 a season is a pretty good deal, or otherwise we're not stepping back and saying, okay, we've put some effort into expediting this, but do we do we really want to do that, or would we rather not have to mow these properties at all? Are we making sure that we're taking the steps that we could to not be doing this work at all, instead of having two city-paid crews and 2 inmate crews and whatever all else it is that we have?
Right.
You know, trying to look at the functionality as well as the way people think, as well as our costs.
Well, and that's the issue that we have, is that the requirement that they're mowing occur, and if it's not happening, then a person next door calls. They don't want to hear an excuse if we can't get a hold of an owner, et cetera, et cetera. They want their property mowed and the person billed. And that's one of the things we look at is we let each one of those properties go. For whatever reason, it ends up being a detriment to the next door neighbors, and then the next guy thinks it's okay to get away with it, and so on. And so that's one of the reasons I think that we're on doing these quicker, through not sending a second notice on a weed person, because we know the last 2 years they haven't mowed. And so rather than allowing us to let that go so far, we put it on a schedule where they're looking at it. They know when it gets to 12 inches, the crew's coming back in order to make sure that it's maintained. And unfortunately, we wish we could get their approval or their involvement, and that they would take care of it or pay at least the expense that we have. But in the long run, it's really the public that's clamoring for it to be taken care of, and they're going to look to us to do it. And that's unfortunately our part of our role, is to ensure that we're taking care of it so that it doesn't ruin the quality of life of the next door neighbor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, from my standpoint, all the council should really care about, the public wants it done. We've got ordinances that require it to be done. How much does it cost? How much revenue do you anticipate? I don't really care how you do it. Let's get her done.
Yep,
Thank you.
that's exactly right. And that's we continue to try different things over the years to get better compliance, et cetera. But ultimately, when I'm running a program like this, that's my ultimate goal, is to make sure that we don't have it get too out of control for some of these neighborhoods, because the ones that are doing the right thing shouldn't be punished for those that aren't.
Makes sense.
At the same time, the public's going to ask for anything, and we have to figure out what the city can afford and what we can do. And I mean, I represent these neighborhoods,
Well,
but I mean, I get the calls that come back later and say, well, but they didn't trim. I'm like, no, and we're not going to either. It's
Yeah, and
the
I
city
think-
sending a crew out, for crying out loud. And so, and I want to make sure that as we manage the program, we don't step over the line to the point where everybody just expects the city to mow their yard.
No, and we are making contact. We are asking. We're telling them they're going to be charged. We're doing everything we can to get them to comply. We would much rather have them comply with anything, and that's why part of the reason, especially with the things that are required on homes, we're giving them extra time. If they're making progress and they're working towards getting it completed, we're much better off than to ever fine or do anything like that, because compliance is our ultimate goal. And we get a little bit better and a little bit better every year with getting in compliance. And I think when we have a program where we go and we do it and we charge them, they know we're serious. We know we mean business each year. And that tends to start changing the opinion, because we're the most expensive option when it comes to mowing that yard, guaranteed.
Well, not for those investors who think $400, and that's part of the challenge of the
Well, I can still
committee,
say-
Neil, because they, nobody wants the poor person who just couldn't do it to get charged an exorbitant amount of money, yet the same fees we have to charge to everybody, and this neglectful person who,
Well,
local or not, whoever, who just doesn't do it, who just kind of runs a tab for the summer with the city and lets us mow for them, do we
but
care?
like I said, we're the most expensive option. If they choose to use us, that's fine, but we're going to keep it mowed and we're going to keep it nice for that neighbor. And it's still, even when we're saying we'll keep it nice, it's still a 12-inch requirement. So
Yeah.
it's not like your next door neighbor that you typically deal with mowing their lawn every week, where it gets anywhere from 6 to 8 inches. We're dealing with 12 inches high, so at least they get some service versus it being an overgrown jungle.
Thank you. Anything, Councilwoman, on that one? All right. Thank you for those 2 reports. That's really helpful. The next item we have on the agenda is issues for further consideration, next steps. And so I put together just sort of a summary of what we've done so far. There's enough for everybody. Just to have us kind of take stock of where we are. We talked about, certainly we owe at some point a check-in with the council. We've talked about gathering input from the public about code compliance. And so the issue is, where are we? Are we ready to do that? Do we want to work on what issues have emerged first, and see where we are? Looking at this draft report, for instance, under reports from staff currently pending, we can check off that we already got those two on the recidivism and the fines. And you'll see a list, I didn't count them, but probably, yeah. This was done before this meeting, obviously, so about 10 issues. Some of those we might just, I'm not sure we want to do a dive into the issues much further until we have had input, but it's kind of up to you all. It's the first time since we passed the IPMC to do a deep dive and walk through it. We pledged to take our time. We need to figure out now what next steps to take.
Why would we set the rates for abatement fees?
Same thing I just talked about. I mean,
And isn't that the staff's job?
it is the staff's job.
Okay.
So there are going to be things that have come back to us that could end up being, in this total review, you're going to get, there's probably going to be 3 different buckets that observations would fall into. One would be policy. Is there something we need to change in the policy? The other would be admin. Is there something we would suggest to staff that they look at, or that it appears that whatever is, some people think things are problems that aren't. Some things appear that they really are. If it can be handled administratively, then that's it. And then if there are initiatives that, like the cleanup initiatives that we talked about, are there some things we could suggest to whomever that,
I mean, I'd suggest the administrative bucket is their job, isn't it?
it is.
Okay.
It is. But if we've observed, if it turns out that, again, what came out, whatever it was, 2 meetings ago, that those rates could be higher or should be higher from the knowledge of the committee or whatever, on the one hand, again, it's a lot of money.
I got no experience in setting rates for abatement, so, I mean, why wouldn't we just say, figure out what's reasonable and
Correct.
leave it at that?
The answer we got when we heard that, and it might have been before you came on the committee, was that they'd simply checked with the county, to make sure that we're either running crews of how many, Mike?
Are you talking the inmate crews?
When we run a crew of our own out to mow,
2 people. Or to mow, you have an inmate crew of 7, and you got 2 crews. One of them's trying to do the abatements while the other one's trying to mow. But in 2019, the county has not told us that they're giving us 2 crews or 1. That has to do with their employment shortage and their staffing shortage, and they won't tell us until April. We may have 1 crew to do all abatements and all mowing, but I can't start budgeting or try to find a solution until I get an answer from them.
the only question here is how much we're spending to put that crew in that yard. And are we charging enough? If we should be, if it's a token, okay, but if we need to be charging enough to cover our own expense, or what would be a reasonable expense to somebody else to have 2 guys show up and mow their yard, then we could have that conversation and shoot it back to you all. That's where that comes from.
Okay, and I know that you've made comment that there's people that find $400 is enough for the season. I had 1 guy, and he admitted that he's in trouble and he doesn't know what to do. Out of all the people we're dealing with, 1 person out of 5,000 cases, well, actually he's had 4 cases. So out of the 5,000, he has 4 cases, which we keep mowing his property because we see it every day that we walk out of this building. And he said, I don't know what to do, and I can't trust anybody that I hire. So the fines are pretty steep. And like the city manager said, they're the most expensive deal. What I face is that we do most of our enforcement in the low to moderate income neighborhoods. And we're charging people who are already trying to get by in life pretty expensive fees. If we want to up it, that's who we're going to affect the most.
This gets back to the third bucket of initiatives and the conversation that we had earlier with Monique about, we were doing all this stuff on cleanups, and then it emerged to staff that they could ask the county or whoever their carrier was to pick up one item a week for nothing. It didn't involve the city, it didn't involve anybody else. I know some of my neighborhoods, people are advertising on Nextdoor or on Craigslist that they'll do lawn mowing for whatever, pretty reasonable fees. We've talked before about whether the city was willing to list anybody who said that they would mow yards. And so far, the staff has said they don't want to do that there would be some liability or some implied endorsement of that individual. But nonetheless, if what we thought, and sometimes this conversation is what leads those conclusions or ideas, is that, maybe there was a way similar to referring people to the trash trucks for the big items, to refer people to where they could get somebody to mow. They'd have to still interview them and so on, but instead of us becoming the default mower, and I know it's just one guy, we could make some suggestions.
Oh, we even that one guy, we tried to help and said, we know people we would trust that I could recommend, which we don't recommend. But when you get the situation of a guy crying the blues going, I don't know what to do, I can get you somebody to take care of that property. It's not what we normally do, but in that situation, it would have solved it. We had a handful of elderly ladies that call and say, I can't mow, nor can I afford. And we try to find them volunteers.
And JAAA has a program to help people with mowing, so do we refer them?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
As I look through your list, I think we as staff can probably answer most of these things and get back to you guys. I think that's the best way. And then if there are policy decisions or direction that we need to seek from you regarding them, I think that'd be the best way for us to go through, and instead of on the fly here or anything like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
and maybe that's the best thing for us to do for the next meeting. I really honestly hadn't figured it out. What I know is that what I felt good about, because I was on the committee last year as this got started, was if what we needed to do is brief ourselves up as the committee and then be prepared with the issues that appeared either unanswered through the committee or that we know are going to come back to us when we invite people from the neighborhoods to talk about what they think is or isn't working, that we were prepared with answers and had not tried to finish our process before we heard from people. But if the next step should be to let you all work at this list, and some of that's fairly shorthanded, but we talked about various collaborations in some of the meetings, like if there's the weeds and so on, why send two departments out to inspect if we could collaborate on just somebody going out, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if you want to look through those, and then we would just talk through the list at our April meeting.
Sounds good.
And then think about having the neighborhood input after we've worked this.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I show that if we stick with does anybody know, do we need to stay with the second Monday for the
planning meeting.
for the planning meeting?
That was preferred.
That was preferred, okay. Even though BZA is meeting tonight, so they probably have the same problem. All right, if we're going with the second, I couldn't remember for sure. The second Monday in April would be the 13th from 3 to 5. And go ahead and pencil your calendars ahead for the second Mondays at 3 to 5. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be about it, but you can go ahead.
Well, no, I think we need both of you.
The answers for the questions are can be provided to somebody else. I'm just not going to be in town that day. Let's see if Sasha's available before we.
Okay, but if Neil's not available that day either, maybe we need to work with is everybody available on the 20th, the third Monday, as far as you know? No? Where are you going?
I'm back on that Monday, but that's after a 23-hour drive, 9 or 20-hour drive. That's 16.
It's getting shorter and shorter. Keep talking.
Well, I had to
Keep talking, we'll get it down to 2 hours.
Skyping.
Get you a plane ticket. It's up to 23 hours. Well, hopefully you're going to be notching off some of the national parks on your little register.
I'm here on the 20th.
Well, let's work on the 20th. We'll have to work out alternate audiovisual if the staff can't deal with it. But, all right. Any other items before the committee?
I thought we had a report back to the committee, or to the council.
If we're
When
going
is
to
that?
wait to have this meeting, thank you for bringing that up, then we'll look at maybe the first week of March, having a report to the council after we've followed up on these issues on the 20th.
I'm just saying, I know something's due. I know.
Well, there's nothing due because this was generated originally out of this committee. We are fine on deadlines. I didn't want to slow us down, but with this meeting on either the second or third Monday, we're in good time to decide if we're ready to ask staff to put it for a report out on an agenda the first week of the following month. So we'll look at April to May. And with that, note that we kept it to under our meeting time. We're adjourned. Thank you. Mike and Brent, get home.